Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Porter, and I'm joined by Sean Keenan.
Heidi lives in a secret city.
And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, but you can call me Pink Panther.
Yeah, you're very Inspector Clouseau to me. That's what I say.
I would love it a universe where Peter Sellers exists with T'Challa.
What are you, like, reading my diary over here? Oh, such a everything that I want in life and maybe a little bit more. We are here today, everybody, to talk about Black Panther. I don't need to tell you that because the box office says you saw this movie.
Twice.
At least twice, because this sucker made around $200 million at the U.S. box office, and holy baloney, that is a lot of money. And it's like, I think the highest rated Marvel movie of all time at this point. So we'll see if it indeed holds up to that mighty caliber of film. But we got a couple things to do. First of all, we do need to thank everybody that goes over to patreon.com/HMP and helps support this here program. You guys get a pre-show, post-show. You get to hear about our adventures and all kinds of things. And the pre-show today was a good one. So, again, to get all that stuff, man, go down to patreon.com/HMP and, join in the fun, man. We really appreciate that. We do also like to thank people that go over to iTunes and do reviews, but at the same time, if you can't do that, we also like people that drop us an email and do kind of the same thing, more or less. So let's go ahead and open up the old HMP mailbag.
Bale's here.
And this email comes to us from Daryl, and it's entitled, Insert Humdinger Joke. All right. Hey, guys, love the show. I listen pretty much every day. You may need to seek help for that, but that's okay. Sorry about the no iTunes review. I'm an Android guy, so I figured I would write this email, but as far as reviews go, I would definitely give 5 stars. I love Bruce's comic book connection. I've actually been listening to some of his Heroes and Villains podcast. That guy is the best. I've recommended this podcast to many friends of mine because it is just good listening. Just wanted to give you guys some love and say keep it up. And I have 2 requests. A Predator episode, which we might be able to kind of, because there's been enough Predator comics over the time, that may not be an impossibility. So we'll check.
Hey, if they make a movie that's Archie versus Predator, we're right there.
Oh, you bet we're there on that one. Oh my goodness. Take my money now. And Sean to give us a Gilbert Gottfried impression. I can't recall which episode it was, but I was cracking up because something he said was spot on, Gilbert, and that is from Daryl. Daryl, thanks for that. Not on iTunes, but I'll call that a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
All right.
And you notice he didn't say he was an Android user. He said he was an Android guy. So maybe he's an actual Android.
Ooh, I like that idea. But Daryl, I will take partial thing to you. Look, I love Sean like a brother over here, but I'm gonna give the hint to me for the Godfrey. But that's just, hey, you want to hear that on another time? That's we'll keep it to Sean for now. That's fine.
Say Affleck. Do it. Say Affleck.
Affleck, you piece of crap.
See,
this is Gilbert Gottfried's amazing colossal podcast.
Gottfried and you're Gilbert Gottfried and you're Stan Lee are so close together. It's like potato.
Listen, they're both from the same area of the country, so it's pretty. No, one curses a lot more. I'll tell you that much.
I have a secret family.
Niagara Falls.
See, the difference is that when I do Stan, I don't have to do the squinting, but when I do Gilbert, I have to do the squinting. If you're not,
which is weird because he didn't always have that voice. When he was on Saturday Night Live, he did not do that voice.
He sounded a lot like James Earl Jones back then.
Yeah, oh man,
this is Saturday Night Live. So, Daryl, thanks for the email, buddy. If anyone else would like to email us, drop us an email, man. HeroMoviePodcast@gmail.com. We really appreciate that. Let's do this, man. What do you say we go ahead and take a listen to the trailer for Black Panther?
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go. We are home. My son, it is your time. Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze. The revolution will not be televised. Show me my respect and bow down. We own ya. We own ya. We only getting started now. Cause we own ya. You gotta think they know me now. Cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie. Cause we own ya. I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all. What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world. You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and pop out. What's on that forever? The revolution will not be televised. Let's have some fun. The revolution will be live.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Black Panther, our new release review of this week, and this is the 18th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Forrest Whitaker, Lupita Nyong'o, Andy Serkis. I'm tough with the name. Danai Gurira, I believe that's it, and Daniel Kaluuya and Martin Freeman. Here's the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. After the events of Captain America's Civil War, King T'Challa returns home to the reclusive, technologically advanced African nation of Wakanda to serve as his country's new leader. However, T'Challa soon finds that he is challenged for the throne from factors within his own country. When two foes come, there should be not a thing here. When two foes come to destroy Wakanda, the hero known as Black Panther must team up with the CIA agent Everett K. Ross and members of the Wakandan Special Forces to prevent Wakanda from being dragged into a civil war. I almost did the whole darn thing here.
Now, typically, is it an IMDb plot line like an African prince must save the world?
Yeah, I picked a better one. I'm not going to lie to you. Because the other one basically was that kind of small little BS. And I'm just like, you know what? This is just lazy. And I took one from somebody else that wrote a better one. So,
But all of us were kind of secretly wishing you'd pick the short one.
You know what? You can all just sit and spin. Hey, why don't we do this? Oh, shucks. Come on, darn it. Play.
Comic book connection.
All right, Smarty Pants. What do you got for us this week?
Black Panther, T'Challa, the King of Wakanda, created by two guys who created a lot of stuff, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He first appeared in the pages of Fantastic Four in July 1966. And that date is important because it predates the formation of the Black Panther political party by about 3 months. That's something that is often asked about. Now, I'm going to be straight with you guys. I know a lot more about the comic book character than I do about the political party. So I'm just going to stick to him if that's okay. Now, my apologies if anyone downloaded this hoping I would talk about Bobby Seale and Huey Newton and their ideas to have armed citizens of Oakland, California keep an eye on the cops or watch the Watchmen, if you please. The Black Panther Party started in Oakland, and so does this movie. And I think Ryan Coogler may be from Oakland as well. So that all seems like serendipity at its finest, doesn't it? Anyway, back to T'Challa. The Black Panther came around before Falcon or Luke Cage or Jon Stewart and Black Lightning over at DC, but he wasn't the first person of color to lead a comic. That honor goes to Lobo. And no, I don't mean that fragging lunatic known as the main man. I'm talking about a cowboy. Lobo was the title character of a 2-issue series of comics published by Dell Comics, and though I can't prove it, I strongly believe he was, at least in part, an inspiration for Blazing Saddles. But back to T'Challa. How did he make his debut? How did he announce his presence to the Marvel Universe? Well, funny you should ask, because it's an interesting story. He invited the Fantastic Four to Wakanda, then proceeded to kick their behinds just to prove he could. From the beginning, we were shown that Black Panther is not one to be underestimated. After his debut in Fantastic Four, Black Panther's story continued in a 13-issue run in the pages of Jungle Comics, a story that is widely considered Marvel's first graphic novel. Critic Jason Sachs had this to say: "There were real character arcs in Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four over time, but Panther's Rage is the first comic that was created from start to finish as a complete novel. Running in 2 years issues of Jungle Action, Panther's Rage is a 200-page novel that journeys to the heart of the African nation of Wakanda, a nation ravaged by a revolution against its king, T'Challa, the Black Panther." Now, that arc was followed up by Panther versus the Klan, in which, you guessed it, T'Challa takes on the KKK. Now, have you guys ever heard of Dwayne McDuffie? You know, legendary comic book creator, one of the founders of Milestone Comics? Well, here's what he had to say about that second story arc. "This overlooked and underrated classic is arguably the most tightly written multi-part superhero epic ever. If you can get your hands on it, sit down and read the whole thing. It's darn near flawless. Every issue, every scene, a functional, necessary part of the whole." Okay, now go back and read any individual issue. You'll find seamlessly integrated words and pictures, clearly introduced characters and situations, a concise, sometimes even transparent recap, beautifully developed character relationships, at least one cool new villain, a stunning action set piece to test our hero's skills and resolve, and a story that is always moving towards a definite and satisfying conclusion. That's what we should all be delivering every single month. Now, after that whole run was over, while he was still in America, Black Panther joined the Avengers. He fought against Dr. Doom, and he met a singer named Monica Lynn. But of course, he missed home, and he returned to Wakanda, and trouble was waiting for him. So he formed a group of all-female bodyguards known as the Dora Milaje. And you may not know this, but they are made up entirely by members of rival tribes as a show of faith, trust, and peace. I think a lot of people miss that aspect about the Dora Milaje. Pretty remarkable stuff for a comic, really. While he's at home, he battles Man-Ape, also known as M'Baka, the leader of the rebel white gorilla cult. He also fights against Eric Killmonger, a man born in Wakanda as N'Jadaka, but when his father was forced into fighting for Claw, the family was exiled to Harlem. He returned to Wakanda with dreams of ridding the nation of what he termed white colonialists, cultural influences, and return it entirely to its ancient ways. He then took advantage of the Black Panther's frequent absences in America while he's fighting with the Avengers to stage a good old-fashioned coup d'etat, along with a guy named Baron Macabre. He was defeated and killed, and then, of course, he didn't stay dead because Mandarin claimed his body and brought him back to life, so maybe Ben Kingsley still has a role to play in the MCU. Now, T'Challa had a famous romance with Aurora Monroe, the mutant known as Storm in the comics, and recent business dealings may bring that to life on the screen. The current Black Panther comic is written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, an author better known for nonfiction. His second book, Between the World and Me, was released back in July 2015, and it won the 2015 National Book Award. So I think it's fair to say that Black Panther is continuing to make a splash in the comic book world. I mean, how many other comics are being written by National Book Award winners? I don't know, maybe Shirtless Bear Fighter? That's it.
I don't know. I've heard so many mixed things about that Black Panther book. Some people like it, some people not so much. I haven't read it. Does anybody?
You don't say.
I haven't read it, so I can't speak one way or the other. So I just that's
I've read
on
it.
the street.
I like it. It's good. It's definitely not typical comic book fare. Like
Okay.
I said, the guy's traditionally writes nonfiction.
And that may be what people don't like about it, is that it's not your standard stuff, because as we've known, if we know anything about comic book fans, it's called, listen, I want you to do new stuff, but don't change my stuff.
And I think that most of Coates' nonfiction work has been a little bit about what the Black experience is like in America. So just having a comic written by someone with that reputation is going to make it draw polarizing comments from people who have never even so much as read it, just because, unfortunately, that's where we live now.
Yeah, Fair enough. So yeah, this was actually, while this is our first Black Panther movie, we have obviously seen Black Panther, of course, in Civil War. He's there with his dad and everything, and of course, that didn't turn out so well. And this actually takes place, I'd say, shortly thereafter.
And Claw showed up in Age of Ultron, right?
He did indeed. Hot second, but he was there.
Yeah, that's how he lost his arm, if I remember. I think that's the whole thing they're teasing around, like when Everett Ross is asking him where he got that arm cannon. I think that the implication is that Ultron provided that for him.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, because he was involved in the Sokovia mumbo jumbo. That's where Ultron got the vibranium for his robots.
Oh, so that's where all the vibranium went to Ultron. I see.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they planned all this stuff out.
Marvel.
Yes, you'd think they've been doing this for a few years at this point.
I know it.
Well, you know.
Now, in 1992, Wesley Snipes had a sit-down meeting about doing a Black Panther movie, and that turned into Blade.
Mm-hmm. And we all remember any Wizard casting call would always put Black Panther, Wesley Snipes, every single time.
And this was 1992 Wizard casting, so I'm trying to remember who else they might have had in that Wizard casting, along with Wesley Snipes, of course, as Black Panther. That's established, but it had to be James Earl Jones as Chaka, the father, that dies in the first act.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then Zuri, the character that Forrest Whitaker played, I got to go back to one of mine and Adam's favorites, and Sean's too, probably, with Reginald Vell Johnson to play the Forrest Whitaker character. I don't know, was Will Smith big enough to be a bad guy yet in 1992?
No, not in 92. He's not.
He's still skinny Will Smith at this point. He don't get
what about
big Will Smith about 95, 96.
Zeus Tiny Lister could have been M'Baku from the Jabari
Lister,
tribe.
wow, yeah. Yeah, honestly, that's not a horrible casting choice right there.
I don't know who would be the cousin, Black Panther's cousin, the guy, the actor that played him was from Get Out in this movie. So that's where I really wish that they could bring in Will Smith to be Killmonger, and then of course Alfonso Ribeiro could be the half brother, but that's not going to happen.
That's ridiculous.
And Shuri would be Jaleel White with a wig.
Yes, perfect. I think you're just writing my journals now. I don't know what's going on, but it's happening.
We got it, man. We got Wizard casting down, but the real casting in this movie was phenomenal. The people that they got for this, I don't know. Were you guys excited as you were seeing the announcements for who was going to be in this? It's a couple years in the making.
Yeah, look, it was a lot of big people, but I mean, honestly, and I'm still going to go back in time here, back to Bruce's podcast. If you want to wind the clock back to his Black Panther episode,
and that'd be close to 4 years ago now.
Is that yeah? So this was a while back, and it was actually predicted on that show, not by Bruce. But
Arthur Worley.
Arthur said, "Hey man," he pointed and no one really knew who Chadwick Boseman was at that point. He was in the Jackie Robinson flick.
Yeah, it was from July 2014. The episode, July 23rd, 2014. And Arthur, I did the thing sometimes where we do our own little Wizard fantasy casting if we're talking about a character. Back then, not everyone had a movie yet, and I asked him who he thought would be good to play Black Panther, and he said Chad Boseman. And I had to ask a little bit more about it, and he said, yeah, he was James Brown, and that's what rang the bell with me because I hadn't seen 42, the Jackie Robinson story. Mm-hmm. But I'm like anybody else. I love a good James Brown flick, so I was familiar with him from there. And then it was maybe a year went by, and they announced it probably 2015, 2016 when they made the announcement. I was pretty excited about that.
It was crazy. And that was just like what a scoop on that one is. And here's the thing, man. I don't think he wasn't a surprise, but Michael B. Jordan coming back in because he's been in Ryan Coogler's other two major films. So that wasn't a surprise that he came back, but it's always great to see that guy because he's just got a charisma about him that you can't touch.
You didn't need him to.
No, go ahead.
You didn't need him to end up being blackballed from the Marvel Universe because he wound up being in Fantastic Four. That's what I was worried about because I think back when those discussions would be happening about casting for this, I said it would be nice if Michael B. Jordan could be in this movie, but I thought he was off the table because of his Fantastic Four involvement. But of course, that's seems not to be the case, and I was really hoping Chris Evans would show up in this movie too.
I've got to tell you, to me, Michael B. Jordan is such a movie star in this movie. You know, it's the one thing where every time he shows up in the movie, you're just like, wow, like that guy has whatever it is that movie stars have. That guy has it. You know, you're in a movie where you have a lot of great performances, and to me, far and away, Michael B. Jordan just completely steals this entire movie. He's
You
great
think
at
so?
it.
When he's
I do.
just when he's standing
Okay.
in the museum looking at stuff, it's like he's got kind of just a normal, everyday sort of dude, persona. But at the same time, he's carrying himself in a very different way. And then when it comes time to do stuff, like you never once question that this guy can do the thing that he's doing. Not once.
I have to admit, maybe I was a little distracted by the crisscross hairstyle they gave him for this movie.
That was his choice. According to him, he did not.
Really?
He did not feel like the character until that hair got together. He'd been growing it out for like a year, so that's actually his hair.
I've seen Creed, I've seen Chronicle, I've seen Fantastic Four, sadly. I have not seen Fruitvale Station, so I can't comment on that. But I think as far as I'm seeing things, this is probably my least favorite performance I've seen out of him.
Oh my God, man! I cannot disagree with you more, Bruce. Like I absolutely love him in this, to the point where at the end of the movie, well, we'll get to that later, but I every time he's on screen, it's like the movie gets a bump, like a bump up to me.
See,
where think about it like this. All right, so we are setting up this movie. We barely see Michael B. Jordan in the beginning, right? He's barely in it.
Yeah.
But in the first act of this movie, he's barely in it. And we get all of this backstory. We get all of this this world building. There's a lot of information being thrown at us, which I can't speak for you guys, but for me, it's a little slow with the world building to me. Like it takes a little bit to get out of that phase of it, but I understand they have to do it so that they don't ever have to do it again, per the Marvel way. But the minute that Michael B. Jordan shows up, and the first time we see him is in that museum, the movie gets a complete kick in the pants, and it happens every single other time he's on screen to me.
I was pretty impressed with Chad Boseman, especially when you've seen him. He's not Black Panther in his everyday life. You know what I mean? Chad Boseman.
Right.
Haven't seen him as James Brown. Haven't seen him as Jackie Robinson. Seen him in interviews and things. I was just so impressed with the subtlety and sometimes I guess maybe I'm seeing past the character or past the actors, and I'm seeing the characters, and it's just the character of T'Challa carries himself with so much more dignity, in my opinion, than Eric Killmonger does. Maybe some of that transferred on to the actors portraying those characters in my eyes. But I was just so impressed with the little stuff. And, I like guys that act to the back of the theater. I mean, don't get me wrong here, but I was just so impressed with,
Do you ever?
with the subtle way that Chadwick Boseman's character would handle like massive threats with just a gentle shift of the eyes, just hold up his hands. He's not there to deal any foolishness. This is a man who is confident in what he's doing, and he's in control. And at times, just for me, Michael Jordan's character seemed like it was written by somebody who saw some 90s movies and thought that's how you're supposed to write black characters. Like sometimes it felt a little shallow, just to me. I don't know how it felt to other people, but it did seem a little jarring compared to how differently the Wakandans are dealt with compared to how that American character sort of presents himself.
Oh man, I totally disagree. I think that both characters have weight to them. I think that the weight is different. I think that that T'Challa is more of he looks inwardly, whereas Killmonger looks outwardly, and that's how they deal with their problems. And one of the things that I was concerned with getting into this, like speaking generalities here, one of the things I was concerned with this movie was, am I going to believe that this is not Michael B. Jordan? And I had completely forgotten that this is the guy that also was the Human Torch. You know, like I completely forgot this guy was Creed.
They're
with
very
you there, man.
very different.
I'm with you there. I didn't think for a minute it was Michael B. Jordan. Maybe that's why I think it's my least favorite performance, because I forgot it was him. I don't know, but I'm with you there. I wasn't seeing Michael B. Jordan up there. I was seeing his character.
And I really like the back and forth with him and Andy Serkis is actually really great. I think those two actually made a really good pair together.
Man, I like Andy Serkis. Has he? I mean, of course, I've seen him through the lenses of mocap several times. You know, I've seen him as Caesar. Is that the character he plays in those Planet of the Apes movies? And then Gollum in about 5 or 6 movies that I've seen a couple of times. But I don't know that I've ever seen him other than that short little, almost like a cameo, you would call it, in Avengers: Age of Ultron. I haven't actually got to see Andy Serkis's face, and I get the feeling like he was really happy to be showing it, because man, he was chewing up some scenery.
Yes, he was. and
he kind of gave me the idea that I would be in big trouble if I ever tried to spend a weekend in Las Vegas with that guy. Like, I felt like maybe he wasn't acting. Like, he's a lunatic who finally got to cut loose and show his face to the world.
Well, he is a theater actor. You got to be careful with those people.
Is he a Kiwi? Is he from New Zealand? Is he a Kiwi?
No, he's British.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe he was a New Zealander, because he kind of reminded me of this wrestling tag team from my youth called the New Zealand Sheepherders, and those guys were nuts. So I thought maybe he was a Kiwi, since Peter Jackson, made all those movies down there.
And let's get into this general thing too. If somebody were to tell me, hey, there's going to be the 3 major Black Panther villains in the very first movie, I would have been like, well, that sounds terrible. What an awful idea. And it doesn't feel like Overload. It doesn't feel like Spider-Man 3, where there's 15 different bad guys. It doesn't feel like Batman and Robin, where, you have 5 different villains and they're just ridiculous, each worse than the last. Like, they work, the villains actually are working in unison with each other. Well, 2 of them are working in unison with each other. And the third one isn't really bad necessarily, it's really deftly handled.
Here's what I feel like maybe they tried to do, or at least this was somebody's idea in the early stages, is that they were going to try to hide the fact that Michael B. Jordan was Killmonger. They changed the name. We see him. So I felt like they were trying to give us these red herrings, at least at one point. Then the script came beyond that. And then the trailers, they said, you know what, we'll let everybody know what we got here. But I feel like somehow this was written so we would think that Man-Ape was going to be the bad guy. Then we would think it was mainly going to be Claw. And then when Killmonger shows up, we're all blindsided. And that's like a twist sort of thing. But then I think they abandoned that along the way and just leaned into what they had.
Maybe. One of the things that I like that Marvel has done is that, they do lean into, the fun of a comic book. But one of the things that they have never, that they're getting away from more and more, and I like that they're doing this, is that the really stupid Stan Lee villain names that he keeps throwing out there, that he threw out there in the 60s, those names are still used in the cinematic universe and on the Netflix series, but they're used in a different way, right? So Killmonger isn't his name isn't Eric Killmonger,
It's like he killed a whole bunch of people.
Birth certificate, things are going down for you. It's like being named Von Doom.
Right, exactly. So what they do instead is that that was his nickname in the war, that's great. Like that is a really excellent, deft way to do that, as opposed to the guy's name. The guy's name was Edward Nygma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
His name is Colonel Mustard.
Really well done. It's so stupid. And so that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie, is that they're not shying away from the name Killmonger, but his name ain't Killmonger,
Yeah, well, you never know, man. You never know. Maybe in the sequel, we'll find out his name actually was Killmonger. When Mandarin comes and resuscitates him, gives him CPR or something.
And
And
you
also-
really are champing at the bit for that.
Hey, I want that to happen too. I want Mander to come back, not necessarily through him though. Just some sort of Mander. It feels like that's one of the few things that they really kind of super left open, and I'd like that chapter to
very
be
much
closed.
upset me there. And Ulysses Claw, I want him to come back. You know, in the comics, when we thought he was dead, he came back as a pure sound-based entity. So I want them to bring back Ulysses Claw as a CGI character that's performed by mocap, but hires somebody besides Serkis to do the mocap.
Why are you taking away the man's
And
bread
just
and
get
butter?
Serkis to do the voiceover.
That's funny. Serkis is like you said. Serkis is great in this, man. The performances are terrific.
Like when he's being interrogated and Everett Ross, Martin Freeman's character, walks in there and he just starts singing "What is love, baby? Don't hurt me." Like I felt like maybe Andy Serkis was just singing that because he didn't know what else to do. Because that was a really off the wall thing.
It just goes, "Excuse me, could you just sing Hadaway for a while we pull on
Like
into
the
this?"
Well, I love that he wants to give Ross his SoundCloud link.
Yeah, especially SoundCloud and Claw being related to sound.
Please,
you know,
please
so
don't make
uniquely
me
linked
listen
sound.
to your music. Was the biggest laugh in the theater.
Oh, that was the biggest laugh in your theater.
That was the biggest laugh in my theater. Was him just go, please don't make me listen to your music.
The biggest laugh in my theater, seen it twice, both times. The biggest laugh is when Shuri gives him the shoes and tells him they're called sneakers.
For me, the biggest laugh line in the movie theater was when Michael B. Jordan turns to the royalty and goes, "Hi, Auntie."
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that was a good one.
But yeah. The sneakers got a big one for me.
So let's.
So,
Go ahead.
what do you want to? What do you guys want to tackle here? Do you want to tackle the nitpicks, or do you want to tackle?
First, what did you think about just overall the visuals, man? Because there were a ton. This was as much visuals as we've had since Asgard, and I think it was done better than how Asgard's been done after three tries. So I thought that was something worth pointing out.
Yeah, for sure. I heard another review where they said that it's almost like they're setting it up to be like something in an amusement park, like a land for an amusement park.
It kind of does,
where you ride through it on the tram and all that stuff. And that's a good point. Is that how far away are they from doing that? Well, you can go to Wakanda also.
Yeah, and they did a good job of bringing sci-fi and fantasy together, which is one of my favorite things. I felt like even with Thor, they leaned too hard into the sci-fi and forgot about the fantasy elements. But here, it was a pretty good mix. They found ways where it made sense for a futuristic society to be fighting with spears and swords because bullets are essentially pointless when everything's made out of vibranium. They came up with a reasonable explanation for why somebody with advanced technology would still be out there having a pitched battle on a battlefield that's really fun to film and fun to watch. I think they handled a lot of cool stuff. Afrofuturism, something that has been around a little bit in literature, sadly missing from movies. And it's just kind of cool to see something that, to me at least, is new.
And again,
yeah,
color.
Me too. I mean, my experience as being a suburban white guy, I don't know much about Afrofuturism, and I didn't even know that term existed until this movie.
And I'll also say, it's been a few years, but I've been to Nairobi. I've seen like performances for tourists in Kenya, and some of those scenes where they've got sort of the Pan-African representation at the royal, I don't know what you'd call it, like the inauguration for a king, whatever that's called, coronation, I guess. Like, boy, some of that did have a little bit of a feel of something put together for the tourists coming through after their safari, but it was still good fun, man. It was very colorful, very, very good music, good fun, good dancing, just like the tourist trap stuff.
I thought like one of the big strong points to everything in this is the costume design for everybody is fantastic. Yeah. Everything, like each of the own little tribes that are all congregating there, everybody's got their own kind of look and everything and own sort of style. And it really, it's the same but yet very different, but yet you think, oh, sure, everybody in this land comes together and they've all got their separate little sects that they go off to, but yet all convene together for the greater of the country.
Very intentionally designed to be inclusive, a community that folks from all different parts of the continent could at least find something they could relate to. They didn't want to make it too much about just one particular portion of the continent. They wanted to be as inclusive, I think, as they could.
But really cool, and anytime that you can have this goes all the way back to just martial arts movies and stuff, but having like fights in water is always just cool looking.
Yeah. When I saw it in 3D, I've got a little acrophobia, a little bit of a fear of heights, and it didn't bother me in 2D. But in 3D, when he's over the precipice of that waterfall, man, I was feeling pretty uncomfortable watching that.
I'm just in there going, "How are you not slipping? How are you not slipping?"
That was the only way I was able to watch this movie, because it's been almost impossible to get tickets. But it being was seeing it in 3D, and that's not the way I generally choose to watch movies. But it actually helped, since there's so much CGI in this movie. It did it a service, and especially there's so many, like panning shots over cliffside and things like that. That it's worth the money to see it in 3D for sure. And
the Jabari tribe doing their hoot, which I guess is sort of supposed to be like a gorilla hoot, because they're the white gorilla cult, or the gorilla cult. But I don't know, when they were coming out on the battlefield, and it sounds a little bit like Arsenio Hall's Dog Pound at the beginning of the show, and then I almost expected a little needle drop of the Baja Men who let the dogs out. That would have been kind of good fun on the battlefield.
Yes, the Baja Men would have been a great addition to this. What are you, an idiot?
It worked on that cartoon movie, the Rugrats in Paris or whatever.
Well, let me tell you something, kids. If that doesn't tell you why you should go to patreon.com/HMP, because where else are you going to find a place that in a Black Panther review will also bring up Rugrats in Paris?
And
nowhere says I.
I know it's early in the year. It's only February, but I will say it's the best use of heavy armored rhinoceri that I've ever seen this year.
It is early.
That is true.
It is early.
I love that scene, and that was so much fun. Like that big pitched battle at the end is something almost made specifically to pander to me.
So I just looked this up because I wanted to see who wrote this movie. And it's Coogler himself, and Joe Robert Cole wrote this movie as well. And Joe Robert Cole is one of the writers of American Crime Story. Like that's that's where he's probably best known. Because it was just so well handled, I thought. Having the way that the African culture is represented in this movie. It was done. It's done in a way where it's like, oh, well, clearly white people didn't do this. White people did not write this movie. And it's interesting that that I had to look to see that's how well made the script is. Like, hey, did any white people write this thing? Oh no, they did not. It's Coogler and
not
Joe
surprising.
Robert Cole.
And in a strange turn of affairs, I guess you could say, I feel like the African characters are written better than the American characters, which is kind of, curious. Not something you'd expect from an American production. But good stuff, man. Good stuff on that story. Shuri, the sister. I was disappointed we didn't get to see her White Panther armor in this movie.
I don't know, but she was I think she was one of my favorite characters in this. Because
she's a cool character from the comics too, and she definitely kicks butt in her own right in the comics. She becomes the Black Panther for a while T'Challa's missing, and I was really hoping at the end they had the perfect setup. She comes out with those sonic blaster gloves fighting against Killmonger, and then she kind of gets cornered, and he's getting ready to spear her with one of his weapons. That would have been the perfect time for her necklace just to have broken out the White Panther armor, but it didn't happen, and I was sad.
You gotta wait, man. You're wanting dessert. You haven't even gotten through the first course yet, man.
Yeah, plus they're probably saving that for Rescue, don't you think?
For Rescue?
Yeah, the Iron Man Rescue character,
probably... okay. You think they want Shuri to be Rescue?
No, I think that they're saving the female version of a character for Iron Man, is what I believe.
And if they do that, they may go straight to Riri and bring in Ironheart. But yeah, I guess that's possible. But Shuri, I mean, I don't know. It's just so separate to from Iron Man to me. I mean, she is in succession to the throne. If Black Panther's out of the country, she's the one who it makes sense would be running things while he's gone. So it's kind of they have to address it, I think, sooner or later. But I do like the way they made her kind of Q from James Bond here, which is a little different from what I'm familiar with.
That was so great, where she's just like, okay, now what I want you to do is punch this. He punches it and flies across the room. Like, not like that. Has to go pick it back up and put it down and everything. That's great
Now
stuff.
do it again, but wait till I get my phone ready to videotape, to video this.
Why are you doing that?
It's going on
No
YouTube.
reason.
No research. But that actress was a joy, man. She is a person that now I have no idea how she really felt about filming, but what came across on the screen was someone who was genuinely having a blast making this movie. Like, she really had charisma that communicated on the screen. And I like Letitia Wright. Is that the name? Did I get that right?
Yep.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I don't know her from anything else, but man, I was very impressed with the fun she brought to her character. She seemed to be having a blast.
Well, she's a British actress. She was on like Black Mirror and Doctor Who.
That's probably where I know her from. It's just one of those things where, like, you see 8 billion actors and you're just like, do I know you from something, or is it just this movie and you being so good in this movie that it makes me think that I've seen you other places?
Now, what about Angela Bassett, man? She is a treasure. That is someone who just, man, it's like she brings gravitas to everything. She may be the new Della Reese.
She's better than Della Reese. Are you out of your bloody mind?
Way better. Way better.
She is a treasure, though, man. She is a treasure. I loved seeing her, and I didn't know she was in this till I went to see it. I don't know how I missed that aspect of the casting, but I was pretty impressed when I saw that that's who was Chala's mother in the movie, because in the comics his mother died, but she's good. She's real good. I
still
haven't
yet
seen
to
her
age
since,
that Angela Bassett.
I haven't seen her in a while, and she's just as good as ever. Timeless beauty there, just like Della Reese.
I was, while we're getting into this, one of the things that I was trying to figure out how they did, and I looked it up to see how they did it, is that when they flash back, when it's Black Panther's dad, Chaka, is that his name?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they flash back to Chaka as a younger guy, the guy that they have playing him, I was trying to figure out how they did it. Like, did they do like a CGI thing like they did with Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War? De-age him, because the actor looks exactly the same as the older guy. And the way that they did it, and I don't know why more movies and TV shows don't do this, is that they got the actor's actual son to play him as a younger version.
Oh.
And he is an African actor. I'm trying to find the few folks that really are African in the movie. Letitia Wright was born in Africa, I believe, and so was John Connie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, South African. But here's something similar to that. They had the guy that played young Zuri,
right?
The Forrest Whitaker's character when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he had a little bit of a droopy lid there, a little bit of ptosis, which I think was CGI in retrospect. But I thought, well, I wonder who this is that has the same kind of eye as Forrest Whitaker. And the actor's name is Denzel Whitaker. So I thought, well, is this a relative? But no, absolutely no relation to Forrest Whitaker. But his name is the same last name, spelled the same way. No relation to Forrest Whitaker, but his parents named him Denzel after Denzel Washington, and he wound up in a movie called The Great Debaters with Denzel Washington. So an interesting bit of trivia there.
Man, what a lot to live up to. Your parents name you Denzel after Denzel Washington, dude. That's just like, hey, good luck, buddy.
And then like 20 years later, you're in a movie with the guy.
I mean, not for nothing, but that's a tall bill to fill.
Not wrong. It's the reason why no one names their kid Adolf.
Yeah, or Einstein. But then again, there is Albert Einstein. So I mean, I'm wrong, but I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, Albert. There's an Albert Einstein who's super famous right now. We just don't know him as that. It's Albert Brooks.
Yeah, that was my point. Is just like, because the second I said that, I'm like, well, no, the Albert Brooks is actually named. So
yeah,
but yeah, it's. I like the flashback. I thought the flashback was done quite well, and again, the good part of like with the kind of luminescent tattoo, if you will, under the lip and everything. I thought that was a cool little sign and everything, and Yeah, again, it's done well, man. And of course, visual standpoint from like seeing the basketball hoop, the makeshift basketball hoop there at the beginning, and then cornering that then at the end, which also says, man, that neighborhood is not well kept. If 30 years go by and it's just like that's the same one that we've got here. It's held up really well, but man, someone needs to come in. But that's cool what they did. But I'm skipping ahead a little.
Give him a new milk crate every 3 years.
Same one.
I gotta say, man, Chadwick Boseman has come a very long way from All My Children.
Oh, is that where he started?
Yes.
And something that shocked me, man, the guy's 41 years old, Chad Boseman.
I know.
And he looks younger than that to me.
Oh,
Guy's in good shape for a 41-year-old.
No,
wait till he's 43. I want to see how.
But let's talk about the real disgusting thing. Ryan Coogler's 31 years old, and this is his third film, and he is this good. It's disgusting. You shouldn't be this good, this young. That cat is just like I want to hate him, but he's so darn good at it. All the stuff, and I'm like, I can't help but love the guy. But man, it's unfair. He's that good.
What were some nitpicks, some negatives you had, Sean? You asked if we were going to get into the nitpicks. I bet you have a few.
I do. I think that it's slow at the end of the first act, beginning of the second act. I think that it takes too long. I think the world building takes too long. I mean, I know that you have to, because you have to be where, you have to get into the universe, but it felt really, really dragged out to me. So that's one of the problems I have.
I'll agree with that. That was precisely my biggest gripe of the whole thing. Was second act did drag a little bit. The first act is great. The third act is great. Second act does drag on just a little bit for some reason. Again, I may have different views come second or third viewing, because you have an idea of what should be in your head, and
For some reason, it didn't drag me down, and I'm usually the kind of guy that gets bored pretty easily if things are moving slow, but it didn't bog me down. I enjoyed the world building. I enjoyed getting to know this country and getting to know the relationships between these folks. I liked it when they're in Busan chasing down Ulysses Claw. I liked the thing in the museum at the very beginning of the movie. I'm having fun with the first half of this film.
No. Look, when it starts, it's great. I like the way that the movie opens. It's just that when they get to the end of the first act, and when they're in the beginning of the second act, it really, to me, it kind of slows down. And I mean, that's going to happen again. That's going to happen when you have this much world building to do. You have a lot that you have to get across to the audience, and you have to get it and you have to get it off in the best way you can. And they did a good job for as much information as they had to give us, However, with that being said, I think it's a little slow,
My biggest nitpick is I don't like Martin Freeman's American accent. Why don't they just let him cut loose? Let him be British. Just say he's like some SHIELD agent from England and let him be him. Because I know what Martin Freeman sounds like, and it hurts my ears to hear him not be himself.
Well, when he was on the first season of Fargo, he has a Minnesota accent like nobody's business.
He could have used that. That would have been awesome. I would have died
here's the
laughing.
thing.
I would have loved it if he was a don't you know kind of guy.
Here's the thing. I don't think his American accent in this movie is bad. It's just not. It's very just generic American, and not anything more specific. So I think that's where, because we know what Martin Freeman sounds like, we're trying to hear Martin Freeman in there, and he ain't in there. It's just a generic kind of American accent.
But I think you hit it dead on what I don't like about it, Adam. I think if he had given it a little Minnesota or a little Southern or a little New York, like I don't know exactly what region Gerard Butler's American accent comes from, but my goodness, it's overwhelming. And a little bit of that might have helped Martin Freeman here. I call it a cop accent. Like I think Gerard Butler imagines all cops talk the same.
You're not wrong.
That's great.
You're not wrong. Like in most recent Den of Thieves, it is a very just kind of. I'm not sure where he's from, but that dude's clearly American.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I shoot you. It's the same one he had in Geostorm, believe it or not.
Good old.
Why are you watching Geostorm?
I wish I had those hours of my life back, like you don't believe. Worst experience I've ever had in a movie, I think.
What?
Now, come on. You need to watch more films, my friend.
I hated Geostorm like you wouldn't believe.
So Adam, what about you? What kind of nitpicks you got?
That was the biggest one. What was same one was really just the second act seemed a little bit slow to me. Everything else is pretty decent.
Now, I've got one
nits.
more.
Okay.
I've got one more I'll throw in, then I'll turn it back over to you, Sean. But
Right.
what was the biggest complaint people had about George Clooney's Batman costume?
Nipples.
Nips.
On the second watching, I couldn't help but notice that they had stitched pronounced nips into Okoye's Dora Milaje dress in the second half of this movie. The first time I watched it in 3D, ironically, I didn't notice it. But in 2D, it became really clear, like she has needless nipples sewn in to her armor in her Dora Milaje armor in the second half of this movie. So if you ever get a chance to go back and watch it again in the second half, just look for the chest region of the Dora Milaje armor on Okoye, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Huh.
So why does, if George Clooney gets called out on it, then I'm going to have to call out Okoye for it too. And also, when she had to wear the wig in Busan, at least one person in like hair and makeup and wardrobe really tried to get her to put on a Michonne wig, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
I was hoping
no
for
doubt.
it. And I love it when it was a weaponized wig. So that's a plus, not a minus.
Yes.
Bruce, I gotta say, I'm looking for nipples in this picture, and I'm not necessarily seeing it per se.
Go back and watch the movie again. It's in the second half, not the first half for some reason. Maybe it got colder in Wakanda. I don't know.
My next nit is on Marvel movies as a whole. How many more times do we have to see black SUVs get trashed in Marvel movies?
Oh, there's usually a sale on them come Labor Day, and then that's how they can really get a few of them in there.
It's starting to become the hallway fights in Netflix and the Netflix Marvel series, where again and again and again we're watching black SUVs get trashed. This is the fourth movie where that happens. It's
all I'm going to say is somebody touched Kevin Feige inappropriately in a black SUV once, and now he hates him. And I just sent you guys a good picture of the pleating on the chest of Okoye here. So if you want to look at your phones, you'll see that.
Oh, dang, you're not wrong. Jeez. I didn't even have to blow that bad boy up, and I could see it. Holy cow.
All right, that's fair enough on that one.
Man, that is clear as day.
Yeah, and that's all I could notice every time she was on screen for the second half of the movie. I sent another one where she's in the background, and it's even more noticeable. And that was that's what I would call unnecessary areolarization of armor.
Man, you are not wrong.
But she was great, and I'll be honest, I hadn't watched Walking Dead in forever, so like she was never a character when I watched. But I liked her a lot. I love the throwing of the wig, just like, hey, I want to get rid of this crap and just go and just beat the snot out of everybody.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Looking at this picture here, their armor is so cool. It's just you just want to stare at it all the time. It's so cool.
Yeah. The Dora Milaje, just as a concept, going back to the comics, is something that's always been incredibly cool. I think they were introduced maybe in the 90s. They weren't there from the beginning, but once they were introduced, it's just this awesome concept of all-female bodyguards that are way tougher than any other Secret Service. And then the idea that they're basically handpicked from the people that would pose the most threat to the Black Panther, to be his protectors. There's something cool about that. And then it got kind of a little bit tarnished when Saddam Hussein, or not Saddam Hussein, it was Muammar Gaddafi had his all-female bodyguards. That kind of tarnished the Black Panther tradition a little bit, but still, the Dora Milaje were cooler than his bodyguards.
So you mean to tell me that once Stan Lee left writing Black Panther, a guy who famously does not do any research at all when it comes to character builds or design, the second someone else stepped in there, it became a much more nuanced character?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you could say that.
Huh. Interesting.
But man, if you want to see something embarrassing, you just need to look up the original character design that Jack Kirby came up with. Even Kirby didn't hit this one out of the park from the get-go.
Didn't he have like
No,
a really
I've seen
crummy
it. It's
cape or
great.
something?
He had like a striped suit with a cape, and
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He really he really looked like he should be selling refreshments at a circus or something.
It looked like that really like the first like real bad Batman that they designed, where it was just like
something like that.
really, this is what you've got? Ugh.
It's awful.
Like
great.
you should really reconsider what you're doing here, because this is not it.
But the Dora Milaje are cool just in general. I love that whole concept. And something, a lot of people, of course, are pointing out the fact that for younger kids, because Blade was a movie before this, but Blade was rated R. Spawn was a movie before this, but Spawn was rated R. So it's not our first person of color to be a superhero on the big screen, but it's kind of the first one that's been given the studio production push, wide release, something that's PG-13, so the younger kids can actually get excited and go see it and don't have to sneak in and accidentally see Barton Fink by mistake.
Right.
But something that I think has not been mentioned so much, at least not by the three people I've talked to.
Hey,
before
I do want to make a point that Meteor Man was PG. So
yeah. Well, go Meteor Man, woohoo! But anyway,
how dare you? Robert Townsend is a treasure.
Women are as capable of a soldier in this movie as they are in Wonder Woman. I mean, that's something that I think might need to be pointed out, is that the women in this movie are very well represented too, not just T'Challa and Killmonger.
Lindsay brought that up, as a matter of fact, as we were driving away from the movie theater today.
Like, watching this movie, I got the impression that that T'Challa is the only man in all of Wakanda that can actually fight. You know what I mean? That the rest of it is done by the warrior women, which is kind of a cool concept. Even the spy, even their James Bond, Nakai is a lady. So I just think it's all really cool. That's something that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at, the fact that it's featuring a person of color, and people are going to miss that the most brilliant scientist on Earth is probably Shuri in this Marvel universe, because Reed Richards isn't in this universe yet. And even when he shows up, they may decide that Shuri's still the brightest in the universe. The most capable warrior in Wakanda that doesn't have superpowers is Okoye. The best spy in Wakanda, is Nakai, Lupita Nyong'o's character. So I think a lot of folks are looking at, it's a person of color on the big screen, that they're kind of missing, that this is inclusive in more ways than one.
Totally agree. By the way, Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke, the guy who plays M'Baku, who, by the way, is my favorite character in this movie.
He is awesome. He's so cool.
He is so cool. The design of his throne room is just so cool. Anyway, they both went to Yale together at the same time.
Huh. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were classmates at Yale. So it's one of those weird, like neat happenstance things where Lupita Nyong'o and her classmate probably did a whole lot of acting, whole lot of stomping around and singing in college, and now they're in a gigantic, massive movie. It's very cool.
Very cool, man.
And I want to see way more of M'Baku. I think that character is so awesome. He's flawed. He's cool. He looks awesome. The only fear I have is that they're going to call him by his Marvel name.
No,
and that would be very bad.
I don't think they'll do that.
Abe, you think he's going to break out the white gorilla costume? I mean, he's like Man in Bear suit, only he's in a gorilla costume instead of a bear suit.
It's really cool, and I've seen an interview with this guy, and like as big and like scary and stuff as he like is portrayed in the thing, he's so soft spoken and mild in real life. He's just like, oh hi.
I kind of like to see some weird spin-off movie with M'Baku, and then the character that the director voiced from Thor Ragnarok.
Oh man,
that
Korg.
would be great.
Yeah, Court. I'd like to see those two in a movie together somehow.
Oh,
Some sort of buddy cop movie, intergalactic buddy cop movie with those two. Yes, make it happen, world.
Have you guys seen that clip on YouTube of Taika Waititi talking about the person who is doing the work for Korg in Thor Ragnarok? He says the actor doing the voice for Korg is Taika Waititi, who's just a really, really talented actor. And then they go to the next thing. Like it's like if you didn't know who this guy was, you would think he's just a director talking up his people.
I like
so great.
There's tons of stuff out there, but his YouTube stuff, like you just look on YouTube, look for interviews about him and Thor. It's just his deadpan interview stuff is just so good. It is hilarious, and he just like doesn't break ever. Just like no, it's the best.
I love that guy.
I'm going to say a little bit of bottom line about what makes Black Panther work so well. And I knew he was going to work if he ever got given the proper treatment, because in the comics, he's amazing. And, if something is amazing in the comics, doesn't mean it's going to be a hit on the big screen, but it means it's got a chance. And he's got a little bit of Spider-Man. He's like a more mature Spider-Man with the costume and some of his ability augmentations. He's got some of the Iron Man stuff with his armor and things, but he's not as over the top as Iron Man. He's got a lot of the tech comparable to Iron Man, but it's not the bright yellow and gold colors and red colors. He's got the Batman Dark Knight kind of a little bit of brooding going with him, and the dead father, and far and away the richest character in all of comics. So I think that's what makes it work, and they managed to sort of embrace that. He moves a little bit like Spider-Man when he's doing some of his jumps from explosions. He uses the tech, but not so much that he feels like a robot the way Iron Man can if you're not careful. And he's got, a little bit of that brooding, and he's got the right color scheme. He's got a touch of Batman without being obnoxiously Batman. So I think it's nice. He's got a little touch of different characters rolled in there to execute as something original, but it still has touches of the others. And I knew it was going to work, and I knew it was going to be a hit, and I knew that the kids in particular are going to love this character because he can do all kinds of awesome stuff. And if you're going to pretend to be a superhero, might as well be one who's a bajillionaire.
I know this is the wrong podcast for this, but I'd like to float a crackpot theory out there.
Okay.
And I'm going into this without no prior knowledge. This is just me guessing. I think what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have a Infinity War happen, and I think that they're going to kill off a lot of people. I think that we're going to see Captain America go away. I think we're going to see Tony Stark go away, and I haven't figured out yet whether or not they're going to get rid of Thor or Hulk. But they're going to get rid of one of those characters as well, I believe. What's going to end up happening is that Black Panther is going to take over the Avengers.
Oh yeah, no question.
I think that's the smart move. That's the right move. And eventually, at the end of 4, I think the Avengers are going to look like Black Panther is the leader. You're going to probably have Winter Soldier there. You're probably going to have Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, basically what New Avengers looks like. But it's with, these characters. And I think that they have set it up so well for that to happen that even by the end of spring next year, no one is going to be disappointed that Captain America and Iron Man aren't in these movies anymore.
Yeah, and another cool thing about Black Panther is he's got just a little touch of Captain America and a little touch of Iron Man to him. He's got sort of that moral high ground along with bottomless bank account and high tech stuff. Yep. So, he has those little touches that make him like a natural leader for the next generation. And then, folks, I don't mean that they'll directly call themselves Captain America or Iron Man, but you've got Falcon, who can kind of fly through the air and do a lot of the stuff Iron Man would do in a movie. I think it's pretty obvious Bucky's going to kind of slide into the Man out of Time with some superhuman enhancements, and then we're going to have that leadership from Black Panther. We're going to have a little laugh or two from the Ant-Man. The Ant-Man. Listen to me, I'm already turning into my grandma. But anyway,
you kids seen the Ant-Man thing?
And I think Hulk will always be around. The question is who will be Bruce Banner. And for the time being, I think Ruffalo's cool with it.
And I think they did so well with Thor, they'd be like Thor Ragnarok, they'd be stupid to just throw that away now, because it sucks that it took this long, but they've just now gotten their sea legs with that one, and they'd be dumb to just throw that away.
And with him being an Asgardian, it's hard to explain him not being there either. You know what I mean? It would have to come down to Hemsworth just not wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm. But because what you have built in is, we're now into the next. We're going to be into the next phase of the Marvel universe, to the point where they're even floating the idea out there that it's not going to be phases anymore. That they're just going to continue movies until we're all dead. And so, a nice button is going to be something that you would see in a comic book that we haven't seen in a Marvel movie yet, which is that, they're going to kill off Captain America. They're going to kill off Iron Man.
Like a true close to a chapter.
Right. So 5-10 years down the line, when you see Robert Downey Jr. show up again, it's going to be a huge deal. You know, it's going to be a very big deal. And that's something that we see all the time in comic books, but we have not seen any of in the Marvel universe, with the exception of Coulson in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but that's not the same thing.
Yeah. And, you know, I really think eventually we're going to have to warm to the idea, and it might be 15 years eventually, but eventually there's going to be another Iron Man. You know, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is awesome, but, you know, I feel like these movies will be going on longer than he will be making them. You know, eventually Sean Connery had to pass on James Bond to Roger Moore. And I'm curious when they finally get to the point where they realize they have to handle that, how it's going to go down and how people are going to deal with it. But I think they need to just like straight up realize, you know, fictional characters can't get old the way real people do. And I think they do need to take kind of a James Bond approach to it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you. And, you know, worst case scenario, you know, RDJ is 75 years old, and they have him behind a desk somewhere teaching the new kid how to be Iron Man.
Hey, we've already realized, and this is like now times, we can already make them super young. We can just, you know, imagine another 15 years of us adding on technology. This is not going to be difficult, people.
You were not wrong.
Yeah, but I also think, you know, they could have RDJ being the old guy, and then we've got the new guy wearing the Iron Man armor. But I think that instead of trying to make believability, I mean, nobody has to explain how in the world did Pierce Brosnan turn into Daniel Craig? You know, nobody asked that question. Do they? Or have people asked that and I've missed it?
I've been confused, but okay.
No, but you're also discounting continuity in comic book nerds.
Yeah, we are a different
They're going to have
set.
They're going to have to lean into it one way or the other, though. You know, eventually there's going to come a time, and I don't know that a big reboot's the way to do it, but of course they always could if they want to lean into a whole reboot-orama. But I think they really just need to have a couple of movies without Iron Man, and then, you know, when Iron Man shows back up, now he's played by I don't know who would be a great person to take over for Robert Downey Jr. I guess he could be played by Ralphie May or something. No, he died, didn't he?
Yes, he's dead.
That person doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
The person you're talking about, we do not know this person yet.
The only person the fans would accept is if they announced that that Wolverine would be playing Iron Man. I think people would be okay with that.
First of all, I would watch that.
You know, soap operas used to say the part of Victor will now be played by Kevin Spacey or whatever they would say. I don't know who played it.
You just like
I'd like that. The part of Iron Man will now be played by Wolverine.
Like you just come to the theater and that person is sick, and they're just replacing it with someone else, and you're just like, well, I guess this is how we're working it now, eh?
Yeah.
Boy, things are going to get a lot more handsy if Kevin Spacey's coming into the role,
playing the part of Victor. But yeah, I think Hugh Jackman could play Iron Man, and people will be happy with it.
Let's talk real quick before we wrap stuff up. Let's talk real quick about our post credit sequences here. First and foremost, the mid credit sequence. That should not have been a mid credit sequence, and I'm a little bit angry about that. That should have been on the end of the movie. Period. That did not need to be
nothing. That was really nothing. And the end credit stuff is usually to link it to the larger world, the larger MCU. But I think that there was a few reasons to really want this one to stand alone, perhaps more than other MCU movies that are being made right now.
But even so, even if you take that completely out, it's just like that's what belongs on the end of the movie is him basically going, "Hey, look, we're no longer going to be, you know, just sticking to ourselves and everything. We're going to be able to go out and share, and you know, best of what we've gotten, you know, all that kind of good jazz." That works perfectly. They could have done something else, even if then they could have done the Winter Soldier bit, and that would have been fine. But again, I feel like we need to see a little bit more of that. And what's the timeline here? Okay, that's another big question that we have.
Well, it's before Infinity War.
Well, a good one, Bruce. I would have put that one together.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all you need to know about the timeline. It's after Civil War and before Infinity War. And I think that tells you exactly all you need to know. So Bucky was brought to Wakanda after Civil War, and he's healing up in time to fight in Infinity War. Yeah. The question I have is, you know, my wife's takeaway was it maybe they're trying to insinuate a budding romance between Bucky and Shuri? What do you think about that?
I think that's great.
He's like
I didn't
100
pick up
years
on that at
old.
all. You know, I'm kind of dead to the world when it comes to romance, so I don't pick up on those cues. So I didn't know if that's just something she said.
I'm sure your
or
wife
if
would
you
love to
guys,
hear
like,
that.
Thought there were romantic cues there.
What is Valentine's Day like in the Leslie house?
Oh, I saw
I
that.
text my wife a message and say, don't forget to pick something up for the kids and get something for yourself while you're at it.
That's an absolute true story. His wife shared that on Facebook. It's hilarious. That's not like Bruce doing a haha. That's a funny joke. He literally did that.
Oh, you little softy.
But
You know, the joke she dropped earlier, great, another broken white boy to fix. It made sense at the end when Bucky showed up, because I'd kind of forgotten a little bit about Bucky still being in Wakanda, which, by the way, where's Steve Rogers here, man? I need to see him.
Oh, by the way, did you guys see? Did you guys get the reference where she goes, "It's one of Dad's favorite movies. I got the idea for these sneakers."
Oh, from Back to the Future too?
Yeah.
Self-lacing sneakers.
It was bothering me. Like I couldn't think of it until I didn't even like it was literally bugging me. It took me like 10 minutes to figure out. Oh, they're talking about Back to the Future.
wow,
I knew it instantly. I knew it instantly, man, because that's the kind of sneaker guy I am.
I'm such a Back to the Future fan. I can't believe that I missed it. Big dummy.
It's like
me.
riding a hover bike. You never forget.
That's true. Well, we have to figure it out. There's a lot of obvious things here, I believe, but I think he's got something else in store for us. Who's to say? We don't know, but what we do know is that we have to find out how this film connects to one Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. The only way this week's Stallone connection could be any easier is if Stallone himself was in Black Panther, playing a character called Meatballs Marinara. Chances are, if you worked on the movie Creed, you also worked on Black Panther. Creed being a movie that continues the Rocky universe. And like all the great movie universes, your Marvel, your Star Wars, your Air Buddies, they know that they need to keep evolving. This comedy bit is no different. Evolve or die, otherwise you find yourself being old and scared, doing whatever you can to keep everything exactly the way it was when you were younger. It's the reason why classic rock stations exist. It's why we're not drinking Crystal Pepsi, and it's why you see people pretending to get beat up when they go to see Black Panther. Hilarious. Because the Stallone connection is so easy this week. Ryan Coogler directed both Black Panther and the movie Creed. Stallone stars in Creed. I want to take this opportunity to talk about something we've never brought up on the Stallone connection before. And that's Stallone's love of the sport of polo. He may be known as the scrappy kid from Queens, but the truth is far different. Stallone's father owned a chain of highly successful hair salons and got sly into the sport at a very early age. Stallone's father was a really good polo player. And yes, everyone knows Stallone had no money when he famously refused to sell the rights to Rocky unless he was in it. But the truth is, he can afford to do that because he grew up a child of privilege. To this day, the man still attends polo matches and even taught Kurt Russell how to play the game. Stallone has said about polo, and I'm quoting, "It's like trying to play golf during an earthquake." And I can tell you, as someone who has spent this much time over the course of 3 years following Stallone, that is a very Stallone statement. He belongs to the Bridgehampton Polo Club, which is probably the whitest sentence anyone has said while reviewing Black Panther. He's actually on the brochure at Southampton Polo Club. He's called the Prince of Polo. Now, look, I'm not trying to lessen Stallone's accomplishments. He's done amazing things, but he did not come from nothing. It makes for a great story, but in the end, it is just a story. Probably the biggest surprise I learned doing a deep dive into Stallone this week is that in 2005, Stallone published his own magazine. It was called Sly.
I remember
it lasted 4 issues. Yeah. My favorite issue has the headline, "What Women Really Want," and it had Pamela Anderson on the cover. Under her picture is the line, "Why we drool over Pamela Anderson, napkins not included." That feels like Stallone may have had a hand in that line too. So there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection. Now, Armless Tiger Man and Cockroach Hamilton, 2 awful Black Panther villains. Let's review Black Panther and try very hard not to offend anyone while doing so.
Is George Hamilton? He's still alive, right? He could play Cockroach Hamilton.
Now, man, I'm going to say Cockroach is more of a Luke Cage villain. Now, he crossed over a little bit, but Cockroach was one of Disco Devil's friends.
That's great that you know that.
What Cockroach also? What show was he on in the 70s?
No, Cockroach was on the Cosby Show.
That's it. I couldn't remember. I was like,
Yeah,
it feels like he was.
Oh man, I can't believe I didn't get any Malcolm Jamal Warner in that Wizard casting from 1992.
Would have been. Well, here on Here Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you like to check that out, head on down to facebook.com/Here Movie Podcast and throw us a like on while you're up there, man. Bruce, what is your Robin rating for Black Panther?
I really like this movie, man. And this marks 2 weeks in a row at Hero Movie Podcast that I have been thoroughly impressed by casting and acting across the board. Top to bottom, even minor characters. I was really impressed and happy, really impressed in Black Panther. Might be the only person to compare those two properties. But of all the comic book movies we've seen lately, this one most reminds me of Wonder Woman. And I talked about that a little bit before. But this movie stands out in its own way. I think it was executed well. High stakes were, this movie had high stakes and it delivered. And I'm going to go Dick Grayson on this one. It was interesting, entertaining, action, thought-provoking. I wasn't slowed down in the end of the first act, beginning of the second act like you guys were. So the director put his own touch on.
And just like that, oh, hey.
I'm back.
There you go. Okay, try again. The director put...
The director put his own touch on it, but he didn't overwhelm the source material doing so. That's pretty tough to do. It was done well, so I liked it.
All right, Mr. Keaton.
For me, it's a Tim Drake. I like this movie. I think that the hype around this movie failed me when it came to seeing this movie, because everything that we kept hearing was that this is the best Marvel movie. This is the very best Marvel movie, and it's very, very good. It's just not great. It's not the greatest Marvel movie I've seen. I put it up there for sure, but it's not. It's not my favorite, and although I do like it a lot, and so I give it a Tim Drake.
Here's the thing. That's a very difficult task for you to do. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is number 18 in the line of a pretty darn good amount of good movies here. So, saying that it's the best of these 18 flicks, most of which are, in that same sort of pantheon of like, holy crud, we couldn't ask for anything better. It's tough to do. I wouldn't put it in at the top of the thing, but again, it's not a bad movie. Sean and I are the same. Tim Drake as well. Really good. Enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun. I enjoyed the visuals of everything. And I don't know what this movie costs. It's not really showing, around. But
if it's Marvel, go ahead, Bruce.
I'm going to say we're getting close to $200 million, man. This was effects heavy, location heavy. This was not a cheap movie.
No.
But it's interesting how Marvel can make a lot of big movies, but also at the same time, not still have like a level of intimacy to them, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure.
Because with this movie, as big as it is, it doesn't feel like it's so big and overwhelming. We really only have maybe a dozen locations, if that. It's big in scale, but small in scale at the same time. I don't know how that works, but it certainly does. And I don't know a lot of other people that can do things like that. But whatever Marvel's doing, they're doing a darn good job of it. And I like where everything goes here. Everyone in this, I can't say that anybody had a sour note to their acting and stuff. It was all great. And I'll definitely be seeing it again for sure. And again, by the end of the year, after I've seen it a couple times, and maybe that second act's kind of warmed up on me a little bit, perhaps I'll change my score. I don't know. But as it stands right now, a pretty strong Tim Drake. So there you go.
Nice.
That is it, everybody. A lovely, epic episode here, but that's always how things tend to be when we get to the, the big guns here. But next week, we are going to kind of continue on this line a little bit and talk about Black Lightning, the show that is lighting up the old CW there. And we heard that if you complain on Sean's show, that's where you can go. You can go work there if you feel like it. And here's the thing. If you went to patreon.com/HMP, you'd really get that joke because you'd hear the pre-show and all that kind of good jazz. So join us back here next week when we review a couple episodes of Black Lightning. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
Hey, big announcement just today. The ebook for Dragon in the Darklands, the final chapter of the Lump Adventures trilogy, my Dragon trilogy, it was released today. So folks that are listening to this, you should be able to find the ebook on Amazon, maybe even the paperback version by the time this is out. But anybody who's eager to see how that trilogy turns out, now's your chance to get Dragon in the Darklands on Amazon. And of course, Nerdspawn Genesis is still there for folks that maybe you want to buy a copy for a friend or family member if you've already read it yourself.
Oh, those Lump Adventures, man. We got a lot of fans of that out here, so get your hands on it, people. Mr. Keenan.
You can find me on Twitter at Hero Movie Sean, and please watch out for one of the varying TV shows or movies that I've worked on.
And the Film Find is almost back completely. We did an episode with Patreon subscriber Krista. She actually came on. We reviewed Den of Thieves and 2 other horrible movies. 50 Shades Freed, and what was the other piece of garbage that we did? I don't even remember. That's how much it meant to me.
Wow.
1517 to Paris. Both were awful. Den of Thieves.
Not as good as 310 to Yuma.
Yeah, when you say Den of Thieves was the best movie of that episode, that's saying something, boy.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I'll tell you this, it's a heck of an episode. It's like, I think the people that go on Patreon, I think we were almost at 3 hours for that show. So there's a lot of good stuff.
Holy cow, man.
We hadn't talked, the two of us hadn't talked in a while, so we had a lot of stuff to go. But hey, man, check that out, the Film Find, everywhere you find podcasts. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking Black Lightning. For Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Fortress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.